Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Pamela Chanel David. Pamela Chanel is the founder and CEO of the Hummingbird Company. She's an award-winning author, a mother, a mentor, a business guru, a speaker, a thought leader, a woman who has reinvented her life. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. I am, first of all, so honored and thrilled to be here, to be speaking to your audience, to be learning and speaking with you. So I cannot thank you enough for having me on here and introducing me to your audience.
Yeah, so let's start out by you just telling us a little bit about you, where you grew up, where you started out, and how you got to be where you are today.
Thank you. So I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, a very traditional upbringing, incredible family. I actually went on to college at the University of California in Santa Barbara, and then proceeded onto a career for the better part of 15, almost 20 years in the retail industry. So I come from a very corporate background. I actually got my nickname from my involvement in that field. I was the Chanel buyer with Macy's for many years. People would come by my office, just kind of a fun story, and they'd be, hey, Chanel. And sooner or later, that name kind of stuck. So I come from a very kind of, I would consider a corporate traditional background, then went on and parlayed all of that into entrepreneurship. As my children were growing, I decided that the route of owning my own company would suit me better. So today I'm the proud mom of 3 grown adults, all out of college and all out and thriving on their own. For me, it's been a traditional journey to one of entrepreneurship, from owning my own special events company, getting involved in coaching and in business gap analysis for companies, taking them from where they wanted to be, from where they are, and that gap in the middle. So I have a varied background, and the Reinvented Life comes from my own personal journey of going through all of what I went through along that way.
Wow. So, it's so easy to get kind of stuck in a traditional job. Even if you love your job, sometimes there's this feeling inside, like, you had where you're thinking, oh, I really need to have my own business. I really need to have this control over my life. Although most business owners will tell you sometimes you don't feel in control at all because it's a lot more work. But what was it? What was it that caused you to go from corporate into entrepreneurship?
For me, it was actually just being realistic at my life at the time. I was a single mom, raising 3 children. I was in the retail space, which the hours and the demands and the travel all wasn't correlating with raising 3 young children. So for me, it was really a life decision more than anything. And I wanted something that I can control my hours on. So I actually ended up in the world of special events, was one of my passions anyway, about the work I was doing. And that's how it all started, is I needed to have more flexibility. I needed to be there for my family and for my children. So for me, it was just the natural transition into something that suited my lifestyle better.
Mm-hmm. And when you first started out, it's always a little scary to start something new. Did you use your contacts from your business world to get that started, or did you just start from scratch? How did you get started in the events business?
Well, you bring up a really good point. I think it is a very scary step for people. One of the things I am is very realistic about what I'm doing. So yes, I actually did rely quite heavily on not just my business contacts, but my personal contacts. I actually started the special events company with primarily private events. And it then proceeded to parlay into business events. I live in Sacramento, California, and have for many years now. And so there was a lot of events with lobbyist groups and state capital type of events that I was introduced to and referred to. But as with any business, I think the best part of the business is referral-based business. And so it was a scary step, but one that I actually necessarily had to take, because I had to get myself into a position that I could make my own hours, I could create the work accordingly. Definitely a reliance on who I knew. And that really led to a big part of where I am today. It's who you associate with, who you spend your time with, that really can make a huge difference in your life.
Mm-hmm. And then are you still doing the events company, or you're no longer doing that?
Yeah, actually part of my company does do, it's all referral based. So if I have companies or people I've worked with before, certainly I get a lot of repeat business from individuals and from businesses to do their corporate events, their conferences and things like that. But through this whole journey, what happened to me, and I'm sure we'll get to this and talk about it, was that the work I was doing in that part of my world, so to speak, actually then parlayed over into more consulting and now a full coaching business for individuals and businesses.
Got it. All right. So yeah, because you've done so many things. I'm just looking at your extended bio that you sent me, even as far as going into like network marketing, direct selling.
Mm-hmm.
Is that even part of what you're doing also?
Yeah, very much so. You know, I was introduced to that industry, and again, so much of my business is people based. That's what sort of drew me and attracted me into that industry, being introduced to it by someone that I knew and had so much respect for. So yes, it's actually been part of who I am. And it was really through network marketing that I discovered an herbal beverage. An herbal coffee beverage was sort of the start for me. Simultaneously to doing that, I had received, I guess scary is the most apropos word for that, but a very scary health diagnosis. You know, as you mentioned, I was involved with so many things between my family, my career, giving back to the community, involved with events and all of the activities that my children were involved with. As they grew, those became more and more significant part of what we as a family were concentrated on. And in the process of all of that, and I really think the most significant part for anyone that happens to be watching this or hearing this, is that you tend, when you are so actively involved with everything outside of you and everything around you, what I didn't realize was happening, and I later discovered, is I had completely lost myself. And so in the process of doing all of these things and really extending myself absolutely as far as I could, I ended up receiving a very, very significant and scary health diagnosis. It didn't happen overnight. It was something that built up. But again, I spent my time thinking about everything else and everyone around me rather than myself. At the time, I was morbidly obese. I had high blood pressure. I had high cholesterol. My sugar levels were through the roof. Every single thing that would be a significant sign of danger was there. And again, it didn't happen overnight, but I chose not to think about it. I literally denied what was going on or didn't even pay attention to it because I was so involved with being sure that everything in my life was sustaining. The irony of that is the most important piece of one's life, their health and their wellness, was the one piece I was ignoring. And so I actually, through network marketing, discovered an amazing product for me. And it was an herbal beverage, an herbal coffee that started to shift the trajectory for me. It was just something I had never even really knew about. I mean, honestly, the world of herbals seemed like it was just some craziness, and I had no idea really what it was all about. I didn't even realize, and I've come to learn, that nature really does have a lot of remedies if we find them and apply them to ourselves. So it was a very natural transition for me. And, you know, particularly what I needed to address was my weight right away, because getting into a more normal weight range was going to be significant on all of these other health concerns that I had. And I spent some time on this because I think it's really important for people to realize that whatever you set your mind to, you can do. And today, I actually weigh less than the amount of weight I've lost, which is, you know, still astounding to me as well, when you think about that. But it's what I've gained in the process that's really been the biggest shift of all those professional accomplishments I had had. The biggest shift in my life is now taking what I've learned, what I've gained, not just about losing weight, but the thought processes that had to go in with creating a healthier, holistic person for me to become. Less weight, talking about all of the things that went into that made me realize it was a shifting of my thoughts. And it's created in why I've written a book and actually have created a whole platform called the Reinvented Life. And it is all about just that. How does one take whatever it is, whether it be health and wellness, or it could be relationships, professional endeavors, whatever one is up to in life that they want to make shifts with, and what are the thought processes that are involved. And that's what I created, a book and really a guideline for what people could do to create change in their life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as you were going through this transformation, because I can't imagine weighing less than the amount of weight I lost. That's just, I can't even hardly wrap my mind around that. How did that change, for example, your relationships, like with your children or people around you? How did that change? Besides them seeing you changing physically, did that change the way you were thinking? Did that change the way you were feeling about yourself? And how did that impact the relationships with the people who are important to you?
Yeah, that I'm so glad you asked that question, because rarely do people actually address this part of it. Of course, you know, you celebrate the person being healthier, and I know for my children and my close family, they're so happy that I'm in a healthier range now. And it's not like it's completed. It's still a work in progress. So, you know, I still want to be in better physical shape, lose more weight, be more active, and I incorporated along the way, incorporating fitness into my life. So there's a lot of steps that one has to take in whatever change they want to go through. But you bring up a very important point, because I think what people don't think about as they're going through whatever changes that they are in their life is it can be very disruptive. And it is not a straight line. So in my case, I actually had to go through a huge process, and not all the steps were positive, and it can be disruptive because your thoughts are changing as you go. One of the things that, whether it is your children, your adult children, your family, your friends, is that they have known you for the better part of all their life or your life. And so they become accustomed to who you are and how you operate. There's a lot of disruption when things that you're doing start to show up differently. You know, I had to go through so many things that I discovered I wasn't setting healthy boundaries for myself, as an example. And so I spend a lot of time on that now, needing to set boundaries. And setting boundaries is oftentimes having to say no to things, or having to not be involved in certain things. And that's been difficult. I mean, there have definitely been, it's not been an all rosy picture. There has definitely been challenges along the way. But the recognition of knowing that a person is putting things into their life or incorporating a new trajectory to their life to those that care most about you, ultimately is the end. But knowing that you're going to be making changes and you're not going to be the same person and you're going to have more boundaries around it. And these are all things that people don't think about when they think about reinvention, transformation, and change.
Yeah. And it's huge because people get used to however I am, they're used to it. You start making changes and it's not comfortable. Not only is it different for the person making the changes, but it can be very uncomfortable for the people around you who are having to absorb these new changes and they're really, even though they're not the ones making the changes, they're in order to keep communicating with you, in order to keep really having a relationship with you, they have to kind of be changing with you. So it kind of changes every single person around you, at least anyone who is close to you at all.
It absolutely does. And it shows us that we are all part of a greater community, whether that be the community of your insular, closest, intimate family or friends, or part of organizations you're part of, or part of workplaces that you're part of. We don't live generally in isolation. We live as part of something. So knowing that we are all energy, and knowing that when that energy shifts, so does all of those pieces around you. And sometimes that requires very deliberate changes. Things that serve people well at one point in their life may not be serving them well today. And I always talk about that small actions and thoughts become habits. Those habits become routines. Those routines become lifestyle, and then they become embedded in who you are. So if you think about, I give this example a lot, if you think about any kind of vessel, a bowl, a cup of coffee, whatever it is that you have, in order to infuse new, more positive things into your life, or something that is serving you better, there has to be some overflow on the other side. Mm-hmm. And whether that be activities you do, or experiences you have, or people that are in your life, it does require sometimes shifts in that. And that's where that disruption piece comes in. Because actually, as I put on the back side of my book, who you allow and what you allow around your life's table will determine the speed and extent of your reinvention.
That's exactly, because some people don't want to go along for the ride. They're kicking and screaming. They don't want to go along for the ride. And, it's so true that you do have to keep reassessing. And in the book I wrote about, life design, I talk about reassess everything about every 3 months, because you know what? Things are changing. What you want in your life at this moment is changing. Sometimes just because it's seasonal. Sometimes because you've made some major shifts. But always reassessing and seeing what's in alignment with me right now.
Well, in my book, The Reinvented Life, and the subtitle of that book is Making Your Life Home. That assessment of change and a consistency in evaluating things is one of the most important elements. And I love that we're so aligned on this. And it's so correlated with what you're able to achieve in life. The piece, and the reason I was describing that whole sequence of actions and thoughts into all the way up to becoming who you are, is when something has become established in you, whether it's serving your life well or not now, people tend to stay with the familiar versus the more favorable in some cases, because it's comfortable. If you think about actions or pieces of your life that have become who you are and embedded into your being, and now it may not be serving you as well, what I point out to people all the time is that's like going against gravity, because now that almost could be construed as fighting with oneself in a way. And so the key to this, and the key to embracing that change, is not to really think about it in terms of going against the core of your being. Your values can still be there, the core of who you are, how much affinity you have for people, all of that is fine. The key to it, though, is how do you interject, if you will, change into your life that's serving you better? And so a lot of people are very scared of change. Just the word change, although I think we can all intellectually realize it's just the most natural form of being. Nature is constantly changing. Our days change from day to night on a regular basis. Our calendars change. Everything in the world is constantly changing. They're not stagnant. Yet, change and the embracing of change and the reinventing of pieces are very, very scary for people, almost to the point, and one of the chapters in my book, I like to have fun names for the chapters, and one of them is named Rubber Cement for this very reason. Because people can get so cemented into an idea or a thought that it's very difficult for them to take a fresh look at that and go, is this aspect of my life serving me well? Am I able to be the most authentic and best version of myself by just hanging on to that cemented idea? And so it takes a lot of courage. My clients, people I work and coach with, courage is one of the most important pieces when anyone is up to anything in life, because without the courage, it's going to get very hard. It's going to get very hard to face the unexpected, to be able to react in such a way that you feel grounded about. Because when you've ungrounded yourself in a way, if you've unruffled your own feathers, it becomes very difficult to feel on solid ground.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And as you're talking, I was thinking of, to me, my values, what's important to me, my ethics, way of being, those solid things that don't change that much. I've been learning from a friend recently that she said, you can still have that same value, but look at it from this way. Let's react to it. Let's act being this way. So I'm still have my solid, ethical, base belief, but I'm looking at it from a different angle and I'm having so much fun with it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's freeing because I was locked in and now I'm freeing. And it's, I have the same basic beliefs, but looking at them differently.
Yeah. In fact, because we're in a world of social media today, I just made that post early this morning or yesterday about that. You can, in the process of this reinvention, actually not only keep your values intact, but use those values as a trajectory to build in new things. So actually you can source the energy of those values into the creating of a new possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that. That's exciting. New possibilities are exciting.
And it is actually the key thing that helps people get over that fear of change. Because again, it is human tendency. It's gravity. I mean, it is a real force. It's not like someone is weak or unintelligent or not a caring person. None of that has to do and fit into the ability to reinvent in change. It's actually the opposite. It is the opposite way of looking at it in a more healthy manner.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me. And sometimes I think of change as something that you might think a little scary, but I think of it as being at the top of the hill on a roller coaster. And you're a little scared, but the excitement and the thought of how much fun you're going to have,
yes,
makes it so he's like, I don't care if I'm scared. I'm going to take this thing down and scream and have just an awesome time on the way.
You know, it's funny. I'm going to show you here the Reinvented Life book. For those of you that are viewing this in person, the theme of the Reinvented Life book is, as viewed in the front of it, is the hummingbird. And the hummingbird is really analogous to all of this that we're talking about. It's the only known bird that can not only fly forward, that can fly sideways and backwards. So it has the ability, and why I think this is such an important part of the reinvention process and making your life hum, which is where the name of that comes from, is that oftentimes in life, people are going to fall backwards. Things that are being put in place maybe get put to the side, or they're flying sideways as a hummingbird can do, and it looks like they are moving to the side and just staying in place and not really making forward progress. The key to this all, though, is that there's a constant state of motion. You are constantly staying in motion. So even if you have a tendency to fall back a little bit or put something to the side or kind of stay in the same place, as long as you're intentionally working, and that is the key to it, working with intention is going to be the most important part of staying in motion. And the hummingbird is representative of that. They flap their wings in such high velocity that sometimes it looks like they're not even moving because it's going so fast. So I make this analogous to people's lives, is oftentimes if you don't think you're making progress or you don't think you're moving or going, know that things take time. It's a journey, and it's not always a straight line. Sometimes the worst things that can happen to people are those things that actually form that new trajectory. So know, and I always remind people that as long as you're in motion, as long as you're not in a state of silence or a state of not doing anything, and silence doesn't mean verbally silence, but just not doing anything, it is amazing how all of these steps contribute to a new way.
Exactly. I was thinking about, just as long as you're actually moving, you're going in some direction. But, there's been times in my life where for some reason I feel frozen. Like, either I have these thoughts going around in a circle and I'm just afraid to even move in any direction. I mean, when someone's having that, how do they shift their thoughts? How do they make that mind change so that they can start moving again?
Yeah, I think that space of frozen or silent it's very, very common for people. So what I share with people all along is the most important ingredient in any kind of change, even if it become a shift of coming out of that frozen state, is start with very, very small steps. And a small step could be something as easy as, what do you like? What is it that brings you joy? It doesn't mean, if you want to consider an entire career change, as an example, which is going to include many, many steps, it could start with taking a walk one morning by a river, or going to a place of nature, or something as simple as burning a candle and closing your eyes and listening to maybe a meditation. There's so many apps on our phones today that could just be a meditation. Any little step that brings you joy, something you might love, is going to lead to something else. So instead of overwhelming ourselves with, I need to make a career change, I can't take this another day, whatever it is for someone, make a small shift first. Enjoy an art class, or go out to nature, or go to a ball game, or whatever it is, a sporting event. that you love, because what it does is it literally can help spark endorphins into your mind when you are getting more joy, more activity, more anything. And when you're acting on more cylinders, you will suddenly feel more empowered to make that shift. You know, that impactfulness and that empowering yourself will lead to greater intentions and then allow you to reinvent whatever it is. Because I always share that reinvention, transformation, change, these are not new ideas. It's not like I created some new idea whatsoever, but I try to put it in such a way that it's very understandable for people, right? And so at the root of reinvention, at the root of any change is creation. You know, inventing something is creating something. Mm-hmm. And so when we pull our creativity back out, creativity is the first things for adults that's put to the side. It's dismissed. It's not honored as well in our lives as other aspects of it are. You know, as a kid, they want to go create something, they create it. No matter what the resources are, they figure out a way, right? Yeah. We lose that creativity over time.
Yes, and that's, you just said one of my favorite words. That is me, creative. So it saddens me to think anyone would lose their creativity, because that's where the fun is.
Yeah,
that's where the joy is. That's where the excitement and you putting something out there and looking at it and saying, hey, I did this.
Well, and so to answer your question with if you're stuck or you're frozen or you're silent and you can't get movement in your life, if you do something, it could be as easy as going to your kitchen and baking something or making something, or going into a garden and, you know, reaping and harvesting those plants that you've just been working on. All of that may not seem relatable to making a career change, as an example. And that's just a simple example I give. But what it does do is it empowers you to realize that you do have the ability to create again. You have the ability to feel good about something. Mm-hmm. You know, when we feel in purpose, it could be about the smallest thing. Then as you do the small things, you do the large things. Mm-hmm. So when you start to feel more empowered, you're going to feel ready to take on more things in your life. And the interesting thing, and what I have found with clients, mastermind groups I do, is that people actually want to do their very best. They just don't always know how to do it. Mm. So I suggest partnering with people that can help you in that. And we get to the point where we think we are supposed to be so self-sufficient. You know, that's what we think we have to do. Self-sufficiency includes aligning yourself with the right professionals, the right circle, the right tribe, if you will, to accomplish what you want. So
I couldn't agree with you more. Our community is so important to us, and no one's supposed to be an island.
Yes.
No. But I was wondering what you mean in your book when you talk about personal justice. What are you talking about there?
That is probably the most exciting part of the entire book to me. Because personal justice is actually what we're talking about right now. When you treat yourself in a more just way, when you're kinder to yourself, when you honor yourself more, whether that be your activities or who you're with or what you do, when you just treat yourself in a more just way, then you're actually creating a stronger you. Social justice comes and stems from personal justice. So if a person is driven by doing for others, doing for community, making themselves a difference in the world, it starts with ourselves. And there's a big misnomer that people have And I know I had it, so I can speak to this very personally. Paying attention to myself, I had, for some reason, another limiting belief that was being too self-absorbed and that was being too selfish. When the reality is, without paying attention to yourself, that is being selfish. Mm-hmm. Because you do not have the ability to show up to the world in the most powerful way and is doing the best for others unless you're the strongest you. Mm-hmm. So personal justice is about taking care of yourself, recognizing yourself, working towards a more authentic self, and then being there for others in a greater way. And that's the way to be less selfish.
Exactly. And I was thinking about when you got that, terrible diagnosis with all these things going wrong health-wise. And I'm guessing that at that point you started to, not only take care of yourself physically, but in other ways. So how did you kind of start making that shift? I mean, a lot of us will shift when we're scared about something that's, something bad's going to happen if I don't change this. But what things did you do? What little things did you do to actually start to go in that direction?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks today, and we've all heard it for generations, this can apply to every generation listening, is if it's not broken, don't fix it. In other words, we wait for things to get to such a state that we don't have a choice but to react to them. And so the Reinvented Life book and Embracing Change is trying to get people to see that you can just change things for the sake of change, not necessarily having to have that very scared moment. What I had to do was first figure out, what do I need to put in place here? Because this morbid obesity was not going to change around on its own. So for me, it was looking at food differently, looking at what I ate a little bit differently, embracing, so to speak, the world of herbal remedies, and realizing that there's a lot out there, as I mentioned, that the earth has that can help our bodies work more efficiently. Ultimately, I had lost, I think it was over 100 pounds, where I felt now an ability to move and an ability to engage more actively in my life. So I infused fitness into my life. These are just some of the things that I did, but it wasn't day one. Day one, and this is over a course of 2.5 years that I was able to accomplish this, is that day one is figuring out, what's this first little change I need to do? Portion sizes, as an example, to get very specific, was one of the first things. As Herbal Beverage, as an example, it helped me reduce my appetite, right? So now suddenly I wasn't craving as much, but I was also raising a level of consciousness as to what I'm really doing here, and realizing, you intellectually know, you go to college, you go to grad school, you think you got all this education, right? And that's all important. But the truth is that just being more mindful in your life and being more true to yourself and being more caring about yourself, this personal justice we just talked about, is actually the biggest and best education I could have gotten.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And you've mentioned this herbal product a couple times, and I bet there's people listening who are thinking, gosh, you lost a lot of weight. I really like to know what that is. Would you like to share what that is so other people might want to check it out?
Yeah, it's crazy, because when I first heard about it, I'm like, weight loss coffee, what is that? I mean, I love coffee. So if I was going to lose weight from coffee, I would have done it already, because I drank coffee all the time. So yeah, on the reinventedlife.com, people can go on and they can learn more about me. They have a place to message me. But that's what it was. It was an herbal weight loss coffee. Go on to the reinventedlife.com, send me a message, and I'd be more than happy to share with them what that was all about. Yeah, absolutely.
And also you were mentioning about just being yourself and being more authentic. Do you want to talk more about that? How to authentically be yourself?
Yes, I think the most important thing for people to realize is that we are a set of circumstances. Who we become over time is based on one circumstance leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. So when I talk about authentically being yourself, it's not like we were having that earlier discussion, just who your values are, but it's more about taking an assessment, taking stock. You know, it's almost like taking a state of the union on yourself. And because of certain circumstances that have happened, it leads you to who you are today. And so the authentic piece comes from, is that really who I am? Oftentimes, when I talk about reinventing oneself with people, I talk about not necessarily creating a whole new person, but maybe helping one discover who they really are, who is their authentic self, and what is their purpose. Because we become just a set of circumstances in our life. And it takes intention to be willing to take that stock of yourself and look at, is this vocation I'm involved in me? Or is this relationship, friends, family, whoever, is it me? Of course, you're going to still respect and love all the close people in your life. But maybe it's, am I giving back as much? You know, people have found all this success in life and they don't really know, how do we give that back? Because maybe one's intention all along was not to create the life that they have, but to create something else. And what are going to be those points that are going to need to be addressed in that? All of it is not going to be good. It's not going to be easy. It's not a life of nirvana. And I like to be really realistic with people about this. This is going to involve some tough stuff. And when I say good, it may ultimately be for the good. But there's going to be some tough moments, tough decisions, things that have to go into more of maybe the undoing to become more authentically who you are and showing up today.
That makes sense. And yeah, if you were to take a state of the union of yourself, there's the good things that you're proud of, and then there's the other things that you think, oh, you know, I wish they weren't like that, or I wish I didn't do that in the past. And so to assess really where, you know, like I'm saying, where am I right now? You know, where am I right now after all these circumstances, all these events that have happened or I've created in my life? Where am I? And who am I really, and who do I actually want to be? Because maybe who you really are is someone you don't want to be. Maybe, you know, there's some negative things that you really wish you weren't doing or saying or acting like.
Well, I know, and as we wind this down, I know it's important that this whole concept of change, and one of the things I'd like to let people who are listening or looking at this know is, again, to reiterate, it really is a process, and to be kind to oneself. You know, this is not going to happen overnight. I talk about in the Reinvented Life as an ongoing process. You're reinventing something. You take that root again of the word invention. When you're inventing something, there's a beginning, and there's a lot of steps in between before the manifested outcome happens. So it's that piece in between. It's the most important thing that I can mention to people, is that be kind to yourself and know that it's not a straight line, and it may not be an easy line, but it's something that can happen, and embrace the possibilities. I just want to say that, I know, before, we finish up.
Yes. And actually, before we finish up, you have mentioned your website, The Reinvented Life. And would you like to just tell people what things you have available for them, your book and just the other things that you have available?
Oh, sure. Again, if you're viewing this is the book. It's The Reinvented Life. And as I say, the tagline on this book is Making Your Life Hum. I also do individual coaching. I do business coaching. What I'm very excited about, we just came off of a fall mastermind group, is a mastermind concept where we as professionals, I have 10 at a time, diverse backgrounds, come from all sorts of walks of life, actually all different countries. As long as they're speaking English, we're going to do it in new languages sometime. But I do offer a mastermind group, which is an amazing group of professionals. And as I say, so much we can learn from each other. And so I have a whole curriculum and outline for that. And then podcasts and other ways that people could kind of listen or read or see what life is all about. So
Awesome. And just to change gears a little bit, what has given you the most happiness, fulfillment in your life at this point?
Definitely, without hesitation, my children. I have 3 adult children now that are all college graduates. They're thriving. They're exploring their own lives. They're self-sufficient. They're in their own careers. And it's interesting when I look back at it, I think, wow, they reinvent so naturally. And I'm so in awe of this entire generation. They're all in their 20s now. And I'm so in awe of the flexibility and how easily that change can come for them. They're my pride and joy. They're worth everything to me. Get a little choked up because my life is so enhanced by them. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate everything you're doing to help people, how open you have been about your life and transforming it and how you can help others. I just thank you so much for that.
And again, it's an honor and a privilege to be on your show, and really look forward to what we can create together, because it's not just creating on your own, but it's with like-minded people. So I appreciate it so much.
Welcome. Any last words of wisdom on how to live a happy, fulfilled life?
Yeah, say the best advice I can give to anyone is don't feel stuck. There's always a possibility to shift. And with reinventing the smallest piece of your life, you can bring new joy, and then that new joy can become a platform for something new. And that's why I love my coaching. If people want to come, this is what I do. It's not a cookie cutter. We design something that's going to make something meaningful. But I would say whatever you're up to, be open to new possibilities, and think about the fact that what once served you may not now.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Can't thank you enough.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yes. Bye-bye.